at that.
Look at that. Thank you.
How about that?
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Goffstown School Board. I call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. If we can rise and say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. And we're going to start with correspondence.
None this evening.
Okay. Accommodations, good news. Jenny, go ahead.
Yes. I was in the library this afternoon with watching a small child's movie, and I heard some moms talking about how they had gone into schools and seen the lay of the land, where their child's classrooms were, and met teachers, and they were all very pleased about it, and thought it was a positive experience for both them and their kids. So I just want to commend the teachers and the administrators for having people come in and being so welcoming to the families, so that the kids could feel awesome on the first day and feel comfortable and where they were going and exactly where their classrooms were going to be and stuff. So
Right. Thank you,
it was
Jenny.
very positive to
Absolutely.
listen to the moms.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Ellen.
I'll just echo that with
Yep.
regard to Mountain View, just positive feedback.
Right. Everybody coming, starting school tomorrow. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jared.
Commend the summer theater program. My family definitely went to go see It's Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. They did a great job, and it was nice and cool in there during the summer. So
Nice.
good job to our theater and staff.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared. Go ahead, Shane.
I'd like to recognize that Goffstown High School has a teacher that is nominated for Teacher of the Year.
Yes.
He's one of the 4 finalists, so that's very exciting, and I think it's a testament to the quality staff that we have in our schools here.
Right. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
Also, I went by Maple Avenue, and the windows look awesome.
Don't they look terrific?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, those old windows that were
finally
there.
gone.
And the awnings are all
Weirdo-
gone.
yeah,
The glass
weirdo
block all gone.
Glass blocks,
Nice.
and the
Yep.
new white, whatever they put around the windows looks really nice.
Yep.
Makes it look like a modern school.
Yeah,
Looks nice.
definitely.
Can I just ask, do we have a before and after picture? Because I've already forgotten what the old windows were.
That's awesome.
So there's going to be a video. GTV is doing a video. Should be ready in a week or so. And it'll be
Nice.
before and after.
Including Bartlett's? 'Cause
All of
theirs were
them,
done
all
too.
of the windows.
Great. Anyone else? Accommodations, good news? No? All right. Thank you. So now we're going to open to public comment, and I know we do have public comment. Come on up. So we do ask that you state your name and address for the record, and we try to keep our comments to about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My name is Donna Pinard. I am a lifelong resident of Goffstown. I live at 65 Riverview Park Road. I am a graduate of Goffstown High School. I also was an SAU 19 employee for 23 years, and I'm married to Dan Cloutier, so just to put it all out there.
Was that the order of importance? Man, how did you end up last on the list?
Maybe the order of history.
Yeah.
I sent you all a letter previous to this, and my concern that I bring to you tonight is about critical race theory and the fact that we do not currently have it here at Goffstown, and I'm here to plead with you that that continues to be the case. I once had a student say to me, "I'm going to visit my father in prison this weekend. I'm so ashamed." And I said to the student, "Why are you ashamed?" And he said, "Because my father is in prison." And I said, "You're a really good son for taking the time to go visit your father." And we have a precedent in this country of always putting the individual before the group. We don't punish the sins of the father onto the next generation. We don't do that. We're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. A democracy is 2 wolves and a lamb voting what's for dinner. A constitutional republic protects the lamb from the vote of the 2 wolves with a Bill of Rights. The individual always trumps the group. Now, I have done many short-term trips to other countries, and one of those trips was doing a medical, helping a Guatemalan doctor go to the mountains of Guatemala where they have very little health care, and helping there. And in that village at 10,000 feet, where there's no oxygen, I must say, at 10,000 feet there was an albino who lived in that village, surrounded by people who were not white. And he was treated really badly by those people for all kinds of reasons. They had beliefs in a certain way and thought that he was something to be avoided, and he was treated badly. And he was as white can be. Now, it's either true 100% of the time, in 100% of the places, 1,000 years ago, 1,000 years from now, on the moon or Mars, or wherever we go. It's true all the time, or it's not true. White privilege is not true. And I would ask you to please not allow this to seep in, even with the soft language of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let me be bold and say, a devout Muslim family who wants to teach their children that according to their religion, certain groups should have the death penalty. If that's what they want to teach their kids, we should not be here indoctrinating them against those values. Now, in this country, thank God, that is illegal, and they can't act out on those beliefs, but they have the right to hold those beliefs. And as a group here, SAU 19, we should not be indoctrinating. The sovereignty of parents has to have the precedent over all other things. And so, before the school year even begins, because of things I've seen or heard, or conversations I've had, where I have a concern that people want it to be pushed that way, I'm here asking and giving the counter argument, please, don't go there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or you could head home.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we'll move on to approving our minutes. We have 3 from June 20th, the school board hearing, our board meeting, and our retreat. So we can do them all at once in one motion if you like, or we can do them separate. Did everybody read everything? Go ahead.
Were the changes made that I emailed?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll move approval.
For all 3?
All 3 if there's no objection.
Okay, sounds good. Do I have a second? Second for minutes?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Anybody have any questions or discussion?
The question I have
Yeah.
is, were the ones, we got Mrs. Moran, the ones that had Mrs. Vermakowitz changes? Yep, but the ones we got on the email.
No, she emailed me.
So can you tell me what changes you had, please? Just,
Yeah, what's different?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Oh,
Do you know
okay, you're
offhand?
making me look back. Okay, hold on.
well, just,
They were minor things.
Okay.
One was grammar and one was a typo.
Oh,
okay,
okay.
the typo being somebody or something, or the, it wasn't the essence of what was.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Dan. Go ahead, Shane.
I just want to put on the record that I'll be abstaining because I was not in attendance.
Okay, thank you, Shane.
And I'm going to abstain. I was here for like a half an hour, but I honestly heard very little.
Oh, right, because you
of-
were on the phone.
Yeah, I
That's
heard
right.
very little of the half an hour, so
Right, no problem.
I'm abstaining as well.
Okay. Any other comments, questions before I take a vote? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then we have 2 abstentions. 2 abstentions, the rest yes. All right, committee reports. Scott?
You want to start with the manifest?
Oh, yeah, Dan, you want to start with the manifest?
Then I would like to propose, I make a motion that we approve the manifest for June in the amount of $1,201,617.76.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
By Ellen? Okay, Dan, go ahead.
We have this one's pretty short. We got some payroll and the ancillary expenses that go with payroll for about $1 million. Sped activity, we have some transportation for May, $53,000 roughly. We put in sound amplification systems for $9,000, and the outer district, the month of May for Spalding, another $9,000 for a total of about $70,000. That was back in June. For general expenses, $5,000 and over, we did seal coating for $38,000. We bought some chemistry textbooks mostly for $16,000. We got that utility dump trailer that we had talked about, that was $10,700. And Amazon, $9,000 in school supplies and equipment. And GZA Environmental, that was part of the asbestos and testing, and you're gonna see a couple of those for the Windows project for $7,400, a total of about $82,000. That's an easy one.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Scott or Dan? All right, seeing none, we already have a motion and a second, so I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we are unanimous. Go ahead, Dan.
I would like to propose a motion that we approve a manifest for the month of July in the amount of $3,771,551.04.
All right, I have a motion from Glenn. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Shane? Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Payroll and taxes, $2.1 million. Several sped activities, mostly to take care of June expenses. I'll just go, the Bedford School District, Durham School Services, Birch Tree, Mount Prospect Academy, Spalding Academy, North Star Education, Ceres, Regional Services, Northeast Deaf, Core Vocational, and Wood Eco. That all goes to about $192,000. We had a whole bunch of general expenses. The Windows project, about $265,000 to DL King. They won the bid. We paid the SAU their July assessment of $206,000. We made the CRF deposit, transferred the funds, $200,000. Pinnacle Public Finance, these are the energy upgrades that have been made. This is an annual payment of $167,000. Primex, our property and liability insurance, an annual payment of $111,000. Power School Group, Student Information System, an annual payment of $62,000. Goffstown Truck Center, this is kindergarten, field trips, athletics for June. This is the backup payment, $34,000. Brian Fournier Landscaping for the MVMS irrigation project, $29,000. Lease for the Alt Ed program, Northeast Sheet Metal. We pay an annual lease of $26,500. More information on that to come later on in the agenda. The scoreboard, capital reserve fund, Sousa Signs, $25,823. Paid for some electricity for $25,500. Eversource Wally Computer, IT data backup software services, $23,000. We bought from Verco some classroom furniture recycling, mostly chairs, for $19,740. Northwest Evaluations for student testing, $17,500. That's WEI, IT licenses, the Sonic Wall, the firewall, $15,600. Office 365 licenses, $15,000 from GovConnect. Arbiter pay, if you all remember, that's the deposit we make so that we can pay our officials, $15,000. Propane, another $15,000. You'll hear about the cost of what that's going to cost us in the next few months a little later on. RFP and Sun Mechanical, some Tech Wing rewiring. We funded that with GAP, $14,569. Northeast Door Corporation, Maple Ave exterior doors, $9,000 for 2 sets of doors. EBSCO information, media, first time I can ever remember going to page 2, 5,000 above. EBSCO information, $7,000 for the media licenses. Impact Fire Service, fire inspections, repairs, $6,700. The NHIAA, $6,450, that's the athletic fees. NHSBA, the New Hampshire School Boards Association, that's our dues, a little over $6,000. Security system repairs, Pelmac, $6,000. The facilities, filters, IT supplies, $5,800. That's BMO Harris, that's on a credit card. WB Mason for paper and school supplies, $5,800. Sterling Corporation, moving company. Remember we paid to have a lot of the furniture and anything moved into about 3 trailers? Well, this is to get the stuff out of it. We finally got it out. Some came back, some went elsewhere. I don't even know what Turnitin LLC, but it's the plagiarism software license. So when kids write stuff and we find out Jared's going, yeah, that's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
That's $5,400. That's, this is a big payout for $3.771 million for July.
Go ahead, Jared.
Just a quick question, and this might be to our finance admin. Are there any other encumbrances from last year that are carrying over that will be in future manifests? Specifically for SPED?
Not really, and not after the August, when I mentioned in admin finance that a few of them bill like 1 month ahead.
Yeah.
A few of them are 30 days behind, then a lot of them are 60. So generally by August and September, we're done with special education for the prior year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Anyone else questions for Dan or Scott? All right, we have a motion of a second. I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? We're unanimous. All right, Dan,
I
last
have
one.
today being August 29th, Scott assured us there's not going to be any payments for the next 2 days, but if there are, we'll get it in the next manifest.
Right.
I propose a motion that we approve the manifest for the month of August in the total amount of $3,145,788.85.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Carolyn. All right, go ahead, Dan.
Payroll expenses, $1.7 million. SPED activity, out of district for September, the Birch Tree Center, $11,656. That must be the one that we pay ahead. Just doing a little math. Out of district for July, Spalding, $8,200. NFI North for July and August, $6,800. July, Wadico, $67.39, and core vocational for July, $5,000, a total of $38,600. Now, we have a pretty long list again for the general expenses. I could either read them, we can put them in detail in the minutes, I believe, Mr. Warren, and the general public can actually, I don't want to take the rest of the night reading these, but I will if you want.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, no, we're good. If anybody has any questions for Dan or Scott.
The one fun one here, we are paying GTV and Parks and Rec services of $19,700. That turns out because we don't pay for the SRO anymore.
Right.
We're paying for this, and it happened to be, I think, a good part of this chunk is the lining robot, or the robot that puts the line on the field.
Yeah.
And you got to imagine the lines are pretty straight with that thing.
Right.
Best lines in the state, according to the officials.
Nice.
All right, anybody have questions? Jared, you good? Okay. Shane, go ahead.
I just had one question. Under the general expenses, we have the school date books for about $11,000.
I should have mentioned that. We cut the high school in half.
I'm remembering at one point, did we have a discussion about possibly discontinuing because they were not used all the time?
Right.
So I just want to confirm that we are going to use those going to this year. I like them personally, but I do know that kids these days do have other ways to kind of keep track of their, they have different agendas that they use now.
No pun intended.
Right. So I just wanted to confirm that we are using those this year, and they're not going to go to waste.
Instead of buying them for everybody, we did more of a, we bought a selection of them, and students who want them have access to them, and kids that don't, because they use their phone or an electronic calendar or something, we're letting them do that.
Excellent. Thank you. That was all I had.
Would you say we bought about 1,000 of them?
I don't think it's that many. Scott, would you?
Yeah, I think you're right, between both schools.
Yeah, I'm
'cause
sorry,
we-
between
we-
EMS and high.
This was high school and Mountain School.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's $11,240, so it's,
Yeah.
they're not inexpensive, and that's one of the reasons why we had talked it down in the budget. They're not gonna use them, why get them, but
Right.
they are nice to have.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I have a motion, I have a second, and I'll take a vote for accepting the manifest. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, okay, we're unanimous. Thank you. All right, Scott.
All right, so on commodity pricing, you'll recall that I did ask the board, due to the volatility of propane and oil and all commodities, supply chain type issues, not to go out to bid per se and have to be compelled to take a bid at a certain point in time to try to look at the pricing over the course of the summer. So we did do that, and I would say that I felt that was a better practice going forward, because rather than locking in on a certain price, whatever that is, on, let's say, August 10th, I saw that the price, there was volatility in the pricing. And it allowed me, this time around, I purchased over the course of 5 weeks. So I bought 1/4 of our total propane over a course of 4 buying periods. And with that, I locked in at a rate of on average of $1.71 a gallon for the 23-24 school year, which is the budget that we're going to be proposing in another month or so. And I also locked in at that same rate for 24-25. So we have some pretty good pricing there. I will tell you that in speaking with the town, they told me, this was last Friday, that the propane went up to $2.07. So I think we did fairly well there. Oil was the one that was much more problematic. I'm not sure if you are pricing heating oil for your home, but it went as high as $6 a gallon, and then it came down into the $5 range. This one was the trickiest one. I locked in at $3.77 per gallon for this current year.
Oh, wow.
You can't buy I can't buy a future on that, so I can't get next year. So we do not use a lot of oil in Goffstown. We only use it here at the high school, and it is a hedge in case the propane is an issue with propane. We switch to oil. So we generally only use about 10 to 20,000 gallons of oil here in Goffstown. The SAU does use oil, and New Boston, about, what do you think, Brian, 20% or so is oil. Town uses a whole lot more. Paper was the surprising one. Our incumbent vendor is WB Mason, but when I contacted different paper suppliers, they were not the lowest price. So Staples this time around was the lowest price, and no one will give us a price beyond December 31st of this year. So that price of $3.69 a ream is only good till December 31st. So, in that respect, I think this, we can talk about it, next year in, let's say, April or May, but going this route was actually, I think, more advantageous for the school district in terms of not physically, not going out to like official RFP, but just contacting companies and trying to get the lowest price. The other thing that I noticed too was that when I let WB Mason came back and says, can you give me an opportunity to match Staples' price? And I'm like, well, and they didn't get back to me, but there's something to be said about that whole thing. So negotiation, we might be able to do better than just simply RFP. So I just wanted to let you know about that. That was it for those bids, or not bids, they were just commodity pricing.
Okay. And you have the MS25 and DOE?
Oh, yeah, that's right, I skipped that one.
Yep.
The MS-25 and the DOE-25. For those of you in the audience, these are two state forms. The Department of Ed, the DOE-25, is a rather lengthy 25-page spreadsheet. It's really fun to do. Not really. And we basically have to account for every penny that is spent by the school district, every revenue that is brought in across all funds. So it's general fund, food service, our grants fund, trust funds, and our capital projects funds. The first couple of pages, and you have a copy of it, deals with your balance sheet, and that is pretty much your assets, your liability, and your equities. And then the rest of the pages deal with what revenues were brought in from local, state, and federal sources. And then the last whole slew of pages are where did you spend your money? And it's broken down by all of the different functions, such as regular ed, special ed, administration, And then it's also broken down even further by account codes, such as salaries, benefits, contracted services, supplies, equipment that you buy. And it allows the state to draw comparisons between school districts. And it also, ultimately, it allows for the state to determine what is the average cost per pupil for each school district for their elementary, middle, and high schools. So when we talk during budget time that we are historically one of the towns that spends significantly less than the state average, this is the form that is used to do it. And Goffstown uses audited results from Plodzik and Sanderson. So they just finished up their audit. As soon as they're done with their audit, we make any adjusting journal entries to make sure that our numbers tie out to their numbers, and then we run a report, and then we work on this form. So the nice thing that we've been doing since I've been here is that all of the data that we provide to the state is audited data, which is really, really nice. Cheryl Pratt from Plodzik and Sanderson also then reviews it. She makes her typical annual, she moves things on the balance sheet around. The expenses and revenues never, but it's always on the balance sheet. And Dan and I were talking about interfund payables and intergovernmental transfers, and so we've got that. So the MS 25 is a subset of the DOE 25, and that deals with your financials. So the DRA uses that for tax rate setting. And the most important number that I want to bring your attention to, there's a few of them, but the voters on page 1 of the DOE 25, for an example, the voters approved $200,000 to be deposited into your capital reserve fund. You as a school board voted to retain in your contingency fund $865,000. And then last but not least, and this is the number that I always have anxiety over, and that is, did we hit the target for money that when we set the budget, we said would go towards reducing the tax rate? So I had set a target of $2.5 million based upon it was a high number, but it was based upon the fact that I knew that we didn't fill teaching positions due to COVID. I knew we didn't have bus routes due to COVID. So that was kind of an aggressive number. And we did exceed that by a little bit. So it was about 2.8 million. So that will be used. Those are the unspent monies from our budget, as well as over collection of revenue that go back to reduce the tax rate. So that's better than what was projected. And that is essentially it in a nutshell.
And we'll sign these tonight.
Yeah, I have those for you to
Copies.
sign.
Okay. Anybody? Go ahead, Ginny.
Scott, that's like a really large number.
Very large.
2 million. Would you do like your very best to explain that to people so it didn't look like we really padded our last budget?
Right,
To
so-
end up with this much over?
Yeah, so a great example, Ginny, is we'll use transportation, okay? So in transportation, we had about a little over $1.4 million budgeted. But that was for 22 school bus routes, and we were only able to do 17, maybe a little bit more. So we had almost $500,000 in transportation between regular and special ed, and then even in athletics, and we couldn't do Mountain View as an example. So that's $500,000 right there. We had a significant number of teaching and paraprofessionals that we could not fill, and then their corresponding health insurance. It didn't mean that we didn't need these teachers or paraprofessionals, and luckily this year we've had much greater success in terms of filling positions. So this is one of those kind of anomalies with COVID, but what it also says is that this board didn't go crazy willy-nilly and spend money just to spend the money. I mean, the money is going back to offset the tax rate. So arguably, you're correct. I mean, you never know when you're budgeting 18 months out that you're going to have COVID and you're not going to be able to fill teacher jobs. And this year is different. So we're already seeing that when I do the projection for this year, it's not going to come close to that number. It'll be a lot less. The other part is the revenue, the over collection of revenue. So when we see things like premium holidays and we didn't spend all of that, or we're getting more tuition, say, than when we budgeted for revenue from, say, New Boston or other students from other towns, that also, factors in.
Did some of the federal grants come into this too?
Not on that one per se, because the federal grants
Okay.
are separate fund, and they wash out against each other.
Okay, because I think some real education needs to be done if we want to pass the budget that's going to have a lot more in it, because the prices of everything are going up. So, I would hate people to think that, we had all this left over this year and we're asking for more
Again, that
this year.
That dollar amount does not, I would say, I have to check the numbers, but I think it was around 1.8 million or so was the underspend of the budget. The other million was an over collection of revenue. But
Okay.
when you when you look at, we were running a lot of, say, teachers here at the high school. I think we were down 6 teachers where they were teaching extra classes and all of that. So
Yeah.
it was, there's a lot less staff than what we truly needed.
Yeah, and what we did to get those positions filled was a lot cheaper than, teachers doing extra classes and stuff was cheaper than having a teacher position, so, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Jenny. Go ahead, Retta.
Just to follow up on that, because I think it's a really good point, Scott, and you just gave an excellent explanation that most lay people could understand without, really knowing where the number's coming from. Is this, and I'm wondering, how can we share that information? So if they're watching, they get that explanation, or if they go through the minutes, maybe they get that explanation. But I think it's one of those things that our budget and how we do business is sometimes a mystery to people, and it does sound like a real lot of money, more so than in past years. And I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity. I think this probably wouldn't come into our budget presentation, which I think is always really well done. But if there was another opportunity to put this explanation forward so people understand, why this is happening.
Okay.
Thank you, Retta. Any other questions or things for Scott? Go ahead, Dan.
I just have one note. Rather than a subset, I think it's a master view.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than, so what the Department of Education does in 25 pages, the Department of Revenue did in 5. Just pointing it out.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
All right,
Also an
so
excellent
Scott, are you set with
Yeah, I'm gonna
everything?
Pass these around.
Okay.
On the MS 25, which looks like this, they only
Yep.
give you 6, you have a school board chair and 6 more spots. We are 7, so
Yep.
just sign
Sign
right
on the
below it.
bottom. Okay.
All these
All right,
stuff.
and you want to talk
Yeah,
about
there's 2.
policy KJR?
Yeah, so this was a policy that you approved last June, and interestingly, although we sent this off to every single booster club, and came back and they said, hey, wait a second, it says here, we have a couple of booster clubs that fund an assistant coach, and the policy didn't really allow for that, or the way it was written. So we didn't want any booster club to be in violation of the policy. So basically what this says, it does allow them, to do that as long as they abide by our district policies and state, federal type laws. We're good with them doing that. So we have a couple of them that pay for like an assistant coach, and I didn't want to dissuade them from doing that and not being able to pay a coach. So this just makes that modest change so that they're not in violation of our policy.
So that's in the red, in the policy that you have. So because it got changed, it would need to go through first read, second read, but since we've already approved it, we're asking that we can waive the first read and just move this forward tonight.
Either way.
Either way.
It's okay to approve it anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're usually, it goes to policy committee, it comes, so we're saying we don't need to do that because we already
Tell you
did
what,
it.
let me make a quick motion.
Go ahead, Dan, you can sum it
I
up.
make a motion, we waive the requirement of a first read for regulation KJ-R.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Second by Ellen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. we're unanimous, and then we want to make a motion to approve what was amended, right, Scott?
Yeah.
Do you want to do that too,
I'll make a
Dan?
motion that we approve the two changes to Regulation KJ-R outlined in red on the paper we received.
Perfect, thank you, Dan.
Second.
Thank you, Ellen. Any questions for Scott? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous, thank you.
Heather, there was one more thing that was discussed in
Yep.
the Admin Finance Committee, and what didn't make our agenda, so it could be under other business, but I might want to speak to it now, and that's the Lions
Lions
Field.
Club stuff?
Yeah, so in front of you is a
Yes.
memorandum of understanding with three other entities. So the school uses Lions Field on, was it West Union Street, for a whole host of things, but primarily baseball. We do not have a town or school-owned 90-foot baseball diamond. We also use some of the outfield for field hockey. We use the upper soccer field for both field hockey and lacrosse practices. The other entities that use it are Tri-Town Youth Soccer, and now there's a new group which is an outgrowth of Tri-Town, and that's called Goffstown United Soccer Club. They're the travel team component. And really the only change, this is the third version of this agreement. So we've had this MOU for 10 years. There's been 2 5-year MOUs. This is now the third one. The only difference between the prior ones and this one is that now we have Goffstown United, that's a party to this agreement. So that's one. And we've also, as you can see what's highlighted, we always have priority. We are the primary user of the Lions Club facility. But in the fall, Tri-Town is number 2 in terms of order of preference. Then Goffstown United's number 3, and then any other group. And then in the spring, it's still us as the number 1 position. Goffstown United goes into the 2 position because their travel team plays in the spring. Tri-Town goes into the 3rd position. And then another group might be like a Legion baseball if they were to play. Sometimes that happens. And then if you look at number 8, what we have here is that in reviewing the use with Tri-Town and Goffstown United, we use the field about 60% of the time. The other 2 groups use it about 20% of the time, so we're doing a cost sharing. And that's really the only, change. So at the end of each year, we get together and then we kind of settle up. We each are responsible for making different payments on things, but at the end, then we settle up in terms of any overages or underages or things like that. So it's pretty simple. And the Lions Club, we could not run, we are almost indebted, without Lions Field, we couldn't run a baseball program. And I should also say that we have a similar agreement with Allard, the Allard family on the Goffstown Back Road, where that family allows us to use it for JV baseball. So both of those entities we're very grateful to have them.
Does anybody
So this
have
one would
any
just be allowing me
questions?
to sign off on this.
So we need a motion to approve.
Move to
what's in
approve
front.
the
Does
agreement.
anybody, hang on one second, Ellen. Does anybody have any questions for Scott? Dan?
If I can remember correctly, other than labor relations contracts, don't we have to have provisions in all agreements that allow for the government entity to,
Yes, it's
for
called.
all intent purposes, back out?
Yeah, but in this case,
Yeah.
we're not,
Is there no financing on this?
we're not paying the Lions Club, we're just,
We're not, we're paying our own maintenance people.
Yeah,
So
we're
if we
paying our-
decide not to pay our maintenance people to,
it's not, so for
to
one.
use the fields,
Parks and Rec mows it,
Yeah.
and then we then pay for the water.
Okay.
We also pay for any irrigation repairs.
directly.
And we pay for porta potties directly. The other 2 entities pay for fertilization, and then we figure it out at the end, so it's.
That's what I was trying to.
Yeah, there's
read
really
through
no
here.
need for a non-appropriation clause in this one.
Okay.
Based upon that arrangement.
But if it says we have to provide porta potties and we don't appropriate for them,
Yeah, I think in this
It's
instance.
unlikely, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions for Scott? All right, Ellen, go ahead.
I'll move to approve the agreement between the district and the Goffstown Lions Club as
Thank you,
presented.
Ellen. Do I have a second? By Ginny? Any further discussion? Go ahead, Jared.
Just as a note for ethics standpoint, I am a member of the Tri-Town Board, so I'll be recusing myself from this vote.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Anyone else? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, so that's unanimous except for Jared, who's,
No, 700.
yep, thank you.
That was
All right, Scott, is that
That was
it?
it for me for now.
Okay. All right, so moving on to Budget Committee report. Jared?
Budget Committee, they decided that they are holding a meeting tomorrow, right here in this room.
Okay.
I will not be able to attend, so Ellen will be the proxy, of course, to the Budget Committee. I wanted to ask the administration, have we scheduled what days we would like to do school walkthroughs?
Scott and I were just talking about that today.
Okay.
Scott, we don't have dates, do we?
We don't, the preference from the school administrators, last time we asked them, was to do them on the evenings and not on the weekends.
Yeah,
So,
not a Saturday.
Yeah.
We've done it both ways.
Yeah, I didn't know if we already solidified the dates. If not, then I'll work offline with Jeff and the team.
Yeah,
to get that
and
done.
we would just do our very best to accommodate whatever date they,
Wednesday or Thursday.
yeah, that's fine.
I think at this point, it's one of those, when can our administrators do it? And then we send it to them to try to get it done.
All right, thank you, Jared. CIP, Ellen?
Yes, just real quick, where'd I put it? Here it is. CIP is presenting to the planning board on September 8th at 6 o'clock at Town Hall.
All right.
I'm sure there haven't been any problems or anything. So.
And Ellen, Danielle gave me a copy of the current version of CIP, and I gave it out to everybody,
Okay.
okay? It's not final, but this is what's going for that public hearing, whatever, that on the 8th.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ellen. PNC, Retta?
PNC will be meeting on September 19th for our first meeting of the year, just prior to our meeting.
At 6:15 here?
Right.
Okay, perfect.
Here?
Yes. All right, policy review, our first meeting is September 12th at 5:30 at the SAU office. And C&E?
CNA's first meeting will be on September 12th at 7 at the SAU, and that is in the upstairs conference room.
Right, yeah, where ours is too.
You say 7 p.m.?
7.
Yeah.
Upstairs conference room.
SAU.
All right, so we're good with the committee reports, right? And so now to you, Brian, Superintendent. Yep.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. Hope everyone had a great summer. We're happy to welcome our teachers back, and I'm happy, very happy to welcome Mrs. Kohler to the table. So
Yes.
congratulations and welcome to Mrs. Kohler. So a few updates for the board. The board is aware that we had one position that we struggled with this summer in filling, and that was a part-time world language teacher. This was, I think at this point, the only unfilled professional vacancy that we've had, which really is pretty remarkable considering the state of many surrounding districts. But we were able to procure a teacher who was able to teach our current 8th graders who took French as 7th graders. We were very concerned that the kids would take 7th grade French and then not have the opportunity to take 8th grade French. So we were able to find someone, and I think, are we okay sharing her name? She's accepted?
I don't know if
Okay.
that happened,
Well,
they're working on that.
Okay,
at the
why
end of
don't
the day.
you let me hold on to that until we make sure that we've got it locked in. But there was a consequence that we were not able to offer French to 7th grade families. Now, Wendy did share with families when they signed up that we were struggling to fill the position, so I'm glad that we're able to take care of the kids who already took 1 year of French. So minimally, I'd like to be able to offer it to everybody, but at least the kids who took it as 7th graders are able to take it again as 8th graders. So it's maybe a little imperfect, but at least we have it moving forward. We have decided to hit pause on the alt ed program. So this summer, we only had about 10 kids enrolled in the program, and we had 3+ staff members that were dedicated to that program. And those teachers were needed in this building, and we made the decision, based on the kids that were signed up, that we were going to pause that program, bring those teachers back into the school where they were needed at this point, and to make some individualized decisions for kids. That has all happened. So I wanted you to be aware that this year, because we had such a small group starting the year, that we have paused that program. So we do plan to reevaluate, and we'll let the board know whether we recommend moving forward with next year, reestablishing that program. But this had to do with, we had a couple of last-minute resignations, and we had teachers that we already had great certified teachers that we were able to move into different roles here. So I wanted the board to be aware. The board had asked us to take care of the payment for your student rep, who Mrs. Moran did encourage not to attend this evening, so Lily will not be with us tonight. But we did pay for her parking pass, and I know that there were some questions about parking fees in general, so I wanted to speak about this a little bit and then ask Mr. Gross if you had anything additional to share. So we do have a parking fee. I think it's $100 that we charge students. And historically, we have had a part-time safety position that affectionately had been referred to as the lot lizard for many years. I did not coin that phrase. I would have come up with something maybe a little different, but there is an offsetting revenue of the cost for the parking passes to pay for part of the supervision of the parking lot. You can imagine that a high school student parking lot needs a lot of supervision. And there's a lot of kids out there, and we want to make sure that it's safe when we have kids walking through the parking lot. It is very common for school districts to charge for parking. Most high schools, it's my understanding, do this. And I would share, parking is at a premium here at Goffstown High School. We have a shortage of parking. We wish we had more parking. And so we have criteria that kids have to be eligible to be able to request a parking pass, and there's a fee associated with that. So I do know that there were some questions about that. Mr. Gross, anything that you would add?
No, I think you've you hit everything that I would have.
Go ahead, Dan.
One thing to add to that is we are not legislatively required to provide bus services for the high school.
That is correct. So state law does not require transportation for high school kids. Our obligation to provide busing ends in 8th grade. I will say, I think it's good practice. I think that we have a lot of high school kids that otherwise don't have the ability to get here. I think it's hard for families to drive them, et cetera. So it is something that we support, but it's also been something, as we've looked at our transportation struggles, it has been something that we've talked about. Do we eliminate high school transportation? Focus the resources that we have on the younger kids that we're statutorily required to transport. But Dan is exactly right. There is no requirement for us to provide high school busing except for special education circumstances. So if I continue on.
Did you have your finger up, Jay?
Just a question, because we're talking about parking,
Yeah.
Superintendent Folke. Is it possible, and I don't know if we do we have any kind of ride share, or what I'm trying to say is carpooling, so preferential parking for people that are carpooling, as an example?
That's a good question. Scott, have you heard that?
No.
I have not either.
And the other thing, like, on that one, now I'm putting the old insurance guy hat on, is that I'd be a little, I mean, I think people can do that, and I think a lot do, but I don't know if we want to get into the business of doing that just for liability reasons.
Well, I'm just hearing that if we have a lot of cars coming
Yeah.
into the area, that might cause other concerns that we have for parking safely. And I don't know if there's, any incentive that we can do to try to reduce that.
Over the last 3 to 4 years, between the parking that we offer here, and then there's also parking at Parks and Rec and at Barnard, I have not heard of like kids getting like kind of shut out of parking. I haven't. Now, that could be the case, but I haven't heard that.
I think it's a good idea, though, because Jared's right. If we want to incentivize students to ride share and have less cars in the parking lot, there could be something to it. Wendy, would you mind following up with the high school on that? So they're done for the year, but it would certainly be something that we put into the queue for next year. I would also share, they have to be in good academic standing, so they have to pass classes the previous semester. They have to not have behavioral issues, so there are other criteria that we require. But kind of that, people who might be carpooling, so to speak, maybe they should have some kind of preferential thought given. I think it's good. We can follow up on that.
Dan, go ahead, sorry, Brian.
Please.
Just wanted to go back to the previous topic. I thought you were going to talk about it. In my A&F report, we just paid the annual rental payment for where we would have had the alt-ed program.
We did.
So we are now going to have a vacant facility, or are we going to have plans that we can actually use it?
So we're going to use it. We've got some office space that we're probably going to hand out to IT and a few other people. When we made this decision, it was pretty late in the game. The lease had already been signed.
Right.
We didn't provide the landlord with any notification that we were not planning to use the program. So up until just a couple weeks ago, it was fully our intent to do so. So Scott, we haven't formally put anyone in that building, but IT has been a consideration. We've talked about maybe some space for facilities. I know that Dr. McMurray is planning on using the space, I think, with some students that he's got, individualized things perhaps going. But at this point, we have agreed to continue the lease. So we do plan to use the building. The building is, it's a nice space.
It's not that far away.
It's not that far away. It's a nice space. We have, good technology there. We set up a microwave internet connection from the SAU. I mean, there's some unique things happening there. And I do think at this point, I would anticipate that we would reestablish that program next year. The numbers were low. If we would have had, 25 or 27 kids enrolled in that program, we probably wouldn't have taken the action that we did. But whereas it was only 10, it was a smaller number, and we felt that we could offer some alternative programming for those students. Not ideal, but again, we've had to make a lot of hard decisions, and this was one that unfortunately it made sense to bring those staff back. But
I will also say that the space that is there, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's very, very good space. I happen to think it's very, very cost effective. So I don't have a plan right now of removing it from our budget because I don't know what the high school is going to do next year. The one thing that we know, even at the SAU, we have people that share rooms, and so we're looking at using the space. But even going forward as as a backup, that space is extremely valuable, and for what we pay for it, it does provide us a good safety net. Should there be a water loss, God forbid a fire, those types of things, having that ready to go and for what you get there, it's pretty darn good. It's, like I said, it's $26,000 a year for the whole kit and caboodle on that space. It's pretty good.
Thank you, Scott.
continuing on?
Yeah, I think so. Go
So
ahead.
just a few other things. I wanted to let the board know that Gage Farm Schoolhouse is offering new levels of after-school care, including transportation. That's been a real challenge for a lot of families. I'm not speaking on their behalf. I'm just saying here's another option for families that are struggling, because we had heard that the Y programs were full. Families are really struggling to find before and after school care. So that might be a resource that might help some families. So we wanted to let people know that. Shane took my thunder a little bit on the Teacher of the Year, but I'm going to do it again. We're very happy and very proud of Kurt McDermott, who is an exceptional teacher and a wonderful human being. He is one of 4. So his prospects, I think, look good. He's a very good man and a very inspiring teacher, and whether this is the end of it or not, we're very proud of him, irrespective whether he wins or not. He's a good man. I wanted to let you know, and some of you might have seen on Facebook, there's a group of parents that are identifying themselves as Goffstown Parents in Action. That is the name of the group. They've established a Facebook presence, and they have a group of, I think we heard about 80 people who are a part of this group. And I received a request from them this summer to look at 2 programs that are associated with school safety. So the two programs that they requested we look at are called Say Something and Start with Hello. We have gone through, Mrs. Kohler working with Mr. Hamill at the middle school, and as well we had one of our school psychologists and our mental health counselor review the programs. We have met with the parents from the group, and we actually met with them with our police and fire chiefs. So I just wanted people to know, if anyone had heard or if you'd been contacted, that they're pretty organized and they're really focused around school safety and gun violence. So that's what their level of interest is. So we had a great, I thought, productive meeting. Very appreciative of them coming to us and providing resources that they thought would be beneficial for our students. At this point, we have gone through and done kind of a cross-analysis of the curriculum within these programs, and we've compared it with our second step program, which we've been using for several decades at this point. There was a lot of overlap, but there are pieces that we may incorporate or may use for some targeted classrooms. So again, I wanted the board to be aware of the request, and again, to thank the parents that, here are people that don't like what they're seeing and they're trying to do something about it, and I respect that. We had a great administrative retreat this summer. We were focused on supervision and evaluation, Schoology implementation, school safety. All of our chiefs attended a meeting. We did not spend an awful lot of time on COVID, and it was rather lovely. Rather lovely. If you have not heard, the state made a pretty significant change in the definition of a child with a disability. And what that results in is special education students are now eligible to participate in school programming until age 22. Prior to that, the federal law is 3 to 21. So here is an example, yet another example, mind you, of another unfunded mandate in the state of New Hampshire in violation of our own state constitution, in my opinion. I think it's great for kids, great for families, and we are happy to welcome our students back. Even students who had either aged out, we have to invite them back. So this is a costly endeavor if you think about the potential services and costs associated with this, but we have now joined Massachusetts in being a state that provides one additional year of special education services with no additional funding. So maybe we can ask our legislators about that at some point. We are in.
Did you have a question on that? Go ahead. Did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think Dan did too.
Oh, did you?
At some
Okay,
point, could we be given the cost to us, at least for this first year?
Yeah,
of this change? I think we and the public need to know
Yeah.
what this does to our budgets, and
Right.
when we go into it in the fall. The public needs to understand. Don't get me wrong, I don't oppose educating children, but that change without funding it is a burden on the local taxpayers, and I think we all need to have a full understanding of what that is.
Right. Thank you,
Mr.
Alan.
Gross, would you make a note that let's try to put a dollar amount on that?
Yep. Jen, I think, has been working on that already, so.
Dan?
So if, when a student ages in on their third birthday, does the individual age out on their 22nd birthday?
Yes.
Yes.
So if their 22nd birthday is today is their last day of school,
Well,
not the end of this fiscal
School year.
year.
It's not always.
so it had always been the day they turned 21 was the day that their entitlement ended. And anecdotally, there are a lot of school districts that had made the decision that they would let students finish the school year. We have not been one of those school districts. So entitlement ends,
Because
the
it's just
entitlement
great.
ends. So it is now on their 22nd birthday.
And is that something we need to codify as a school board, if we haven't done that before? And where is that?
Yeah, it's probably the only place that I can think of where that would live is we have a special education local plan that we're required to have. That would be contained within that local plan. And actually, we probably should update the local plan to include through age 22 now.
No, through age 21,
Through age 21, until age 22.
until
Yeah.
age
Until-
22.
right.
Let us follow up with Dr. Dolph because I don't know if we should change the special ed local plan. It's probably not required because we're required to do this by law, so, but we'll follow up on that. And minimally, I think we put some costs associated with that because it's gonna be a pretty big number. You know, if you've got a costly student and, you know, $100,000 plus is not unexpected.
So Ginny had her hand up, and then Ellen. Go
And I
ahead,
should
Ginny.
say, it was unbudgeted too, by the way. So we didn't have prior knowledge to budget and correspondingly make sure we have the finances to provide these services to these students.
Right, good.
It's really good for students.
Agreed.
Because being somebody who worked with these students and as they aged out, moms and dads panicked because there's nothing for kids, or very few things for kids as they age out. The state doesn't provide very much at all for these kids, and so all of a sudden they have nothing and they're home doing nothing. So I think it's one of those things that the state is dumping on the schools as another unfunded mandate. So it's too bad. It's a lot of money. But it's really helpful for
I
these
agree.
kids another year.
It's really good for kids. It's really good for their families. You know, unfortunately, as a former special ed director, I watched families that were eligible for area agency adult services get put on a waiting list, have no funding associated with, and students
fall
that we
apart.
spent,
Yep.
you know, decades educating, started to kind of wither away. So it does
absolutely.
happen. It is very sad. I don't want any of our families to think that I don't support this. I do support this, but to the state, pay for it. $3,700 per student doesn't get us there, folks. So, you know, when we look at adequacy, we get a little differential aid for special ed, but again, it's not very much. It's like $5,500 instead of $3,700. It's not a lot of money that we get to pay for this. So,
Ellen, go ahead, you had your hand
If I'm correct, not at graduation, but way back in preschool, special ed comes into our program based on their birthday,
correct.
okay?
We have to have
So-
an IEP in place on their third
On their
birthday if
birthday.
they're eligible.
So I'm just thinking, at the other end, if we went with on the birthday, it just makes sense to me,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
That, just that we do it at both ends and it's
We
based
do it at
on
both
their
ends.
age.
And that's consistent with what we had done previously in terms of
Right.
on the 21st birthday.
And this just, that pushed it out one more year, but everything you're talking about just happens a year later then.
Yeah.
Because there's still nothing there. And that's, I'm sorry, you know, but as a school, public school system, we can't solve that.
Adult area agency services are certainly beyond the scope of the local school district. We're sympathetic to these families. You know, again, I think it's good for kids, good for families. I think it's not good for the balance sheet, and I think it's not good for the state meeting its constitutional obligation of funding an adequate education for all students.
Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Brian.
no
Oh,
one-
sorry, Shane, I didn't see your hand up.
That's okay.
Oh, you had your hand up too?
No, I
Oh.
was just,
Okay.
I don't know if we'll have the answer to this tonight or not, but the majority of our students who are, you know, the 18 to 22 range, are they housed within our schools still, or are they on more of a transitional into adult living type of track? Because I know I've been part of programs where once they hit 18, traditional high school kind of, you know, fades out, and we work on more of the transition to adult living, exposing them to community, things like that. And I ask this because keeping them housed within our school walls is probably economically a little bit cheaper. However, I don't know if it's the intent of this bill is probably more based on getting these students into adult services, you know, those life skills that they need. So I guess my question is, do we typically continue to house these students here?
We typically do. They are also, depending on each individual's
Sure.
you know, program, they're out in the community as well, but they're still pretty typically housed out of here.
All right.
We have some kids that may not be, but I would say most would be.
Sure, and I know every case is different.
Yeah.
But obviously that kind of makes a difference financially. And wasn't there discussion of district's getting some kind of rebate for this like unexpected cost. I don't think it was a lot of money, and I doubt we'll ever see it. But wasn't that part of the discussion? When this was
Mr.
getting
Gross, do you
passed?
remember any
do.
money coming along with this?
Yeah, but there's strings attached to that, so you have to spend down every penny of all of your IDEA and your ARP ESSER funds in order to do that. Then
Right.
there's money that's available, so that would be, but it's a 1-year deal.
Right.
So if I had a state rep here who sponsored this bill, they'd say, but we did fund it. You did, but in a very roundabout way and in year 1.
Right. So essentially, like Brian said, it is an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It's absolutely an unfunded mandate, and I think for any school districts that were interested, I think that a legal challenge to this would be an interesting process to go through. So,
And we should-
again,
and we should-
good for kids, good for families.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, we
My
should put that out
beef
there
is
as-
with the state and
Right.
not with families, but,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
we're already short on resources. They already don't meet their constitutional obligation, and now you're gonna increase the load of what they should be providing to us. It's kind of counterintuitive, but, continuing on.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a few other things. We are investigating a new program that the Department of Ed is funding called Tutor.com, and it's a new platform. Mrs. Kohler, Mr. Bourget, and I met today to look at some of the details. Wendy is chasing this down. The state does not have a DPA, which is the sign-off for data privacy, but we're working on that. And this, we think it's kind of an interesting idea. We're actually kind of excited about it. There are a couple of options that students would have the ability to get live tutoring support while they're doing homework. And it's pretty easy. There's a tie-in that when students sign into Schoology, there would be a login right through Schoology where they could say, geez, I don't know how to do this homework, and they can live time get tutoring support. Kind of neat, right?
Oh, that's
So we're pretty interested in this. This would not replace programs that we offer, like we call it Homework Den, but it's after-school, teacher-supported homework study. We would keep those programs, but this would be for students that are home, students that might not be able to get to the Homework Den, and it's looks like a good deal, but we're a little cautious, but we're investigating it.
It's open to grades 6 through 12 is what the state has paid for. Beyond the on-demand tutoring that Brian had spoke about, you can also schedule ahead of time for tutoring. So if you know you have a test coming up in a certain subject, you can go ahead and you can sign up for a time.
Wow.
Another, what I thought was a great perk is they also offer ACT and SAT prep. And as part of that, it's a self-paced program that goes along with it, and they offer practice tests as well. They do vet all of their tutors, so beyond just looking at certifications, they also have to take tests in their subject areas. They have one-on-one interviews, they do background checks. So we are looking at it, but waiting for that DPA to be signed, and then we'll start some meetings from there. But
And Wendy,
it's
can
pretty
you also
interesting.
share, you had shared with me that Schoology, the integration with Schoology, it essentially records
yeah.
the exchange, so that if anyone came back and said, geez, my kid was working with this tutor and the tutor said something inappropriate or whatever it may be, we could pull it all up. All of the exchange is archived,
Mr.
right?
Bulkey, it's also important to mention that none of it is video. None of this is video conferencing. It's through chat or voice only, and it does keep it right in Schoology. And like Brian had mentioned, it's a single sign-on. So when you sign into Schoology, you could then go to the icon for tutor.com to be able to get that help.
Go ahead, Dan.
How does the program tie in to Goffstown? I mean, I'm going to presume from what I hear, all of these tutors are going to be vetted by the state, paid by the state.
Yep.
So do we have to opt in our students to make it available, or can they just make it available themselves? Or,
Yeah, good question. Do you feel like you have a sense of that, Wendy?
They didn't go into much detail about that, Dan, to be honest with you. I went to the original webinar with the director just to get an overview, and there's more information that will come once we kind of say that we're interested in finding out more as a district, which is kind of where we are right now. There's also a tech meeting that would need to happen as well for that single sign-on to be able to occur.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I would say, it looks like if we say, yes, we're interested, then students would be eligible to get the services. So kind of from where I sit, let parents decide. If this
Yeah,
is a
it's
service that
it's a
might be
no-brainer.
might be
I
helpful.
wouldn't want to say no.
Yeah, it might be helpful to some kids,
Right.
and I love the SAT and ACT prep.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great feature.
Greta had your hand.
It's more of a comment because we use a similar program, not this particular one. We've used two different ones, and when it's tied into the LMS, it's there and they opt into it. So if somebody's got a course that's in the LMS, they can have it as an item that they can just click on the menu and get to it. One of the questions you may want to ask if there's a limit by student. We find that several students like use lots of time, and other students, so you may want to ask about that.
Okay, that's a good question.
thank you.
So we'll
Thank you,
keep,
Ed.
we'll keep pursuing that. And just a couple of other things, and I'll ask Mr. Gross to give just a very brief update on all the projects. So Scott, anything that's still, if you could just give an update on that. So Maple Ave, if you haven't heard, the select board voted last week to make Maple Ave a one-way street and only allow school buses to turn onto Maple Ave from Elm Street during, 45 minutes before
Yeah.
school and 45 minutes after school. We anticipate traffic being problematic tomorrow. So I would say we were involved in this process. We're supportive of the select board and the police department's efforts, and anything that makes traffic better in Goffstown, I think in general, we would support. But we think it's going to be a rough slog getting into Maple Ave for the first week of school. So we've put out, the police department did a great video. We pushed that out to parents. So hopefully people are well prepared. We're nervous about staff members that might get stuck in traffic and not be able to get in to be at work on time. But, again, we've been talking about this for 15 years, and now we're taking a chance to really do something. So we hope it's going to work out. And at this point, we'll be over there tomorrow morning watching how it goes. So I think it's going to be hard. Again, this is the reality of having a school that wasn't designed to have this many parents driving their kids. Think about what Maple Ave was. It was a neighborhood school. You had a lot of kids walking. It used to be that most kids took the bus. So, to be able to process hundreds of cars during drop-off and pickup every day is really not how the majority of our schools were designed. So
Ellen had her hand up, and then Dan. Go ahead,
A couple
Ellen.
of things came to mind. So Maple Ave, except for the 45 minutes before and after, is going to be
one way
one
only.
way downhill.
One way downhill, exactly. So parents,
Okay.
if you come down, kind of from Smith Road
Right.
and come down onto Maple Ave, you're going to be able to exit onto Elm Street. But if you're on Elm Street looking to turn
You can't.
into Maple Ave, you're not going to be allowed to do that. And one of the things that the police department was trying to solve was people sitting on Elm Street live parking, because that's exceptionally dangerous. So that was one of the primary things that the police department was looking to eliminate that practice. They don't want live parking on Elm Street, not safe.
Oh, there was something.
You can also come in on Patty Hill and go down Winter Hill.
Yep.
Yep,
And go
Paige.
in that way
And
too.
I think GTV did a nice job showing the different routes. They had maps, they had kind of like, a camera on the window while they were driving, so.
Go ahead, Dan.
Was Jared's question answered? Upper and lower parking lot?
I know you sent an email to all of us, and I did see something today that it,
Do you want me to respond?
yeah, go ahead.
So Ms. Pishka did send out a they were working on it, and she did send out a newsletter to those parents of Maple Ave. So she has articulated what the parking would be, or the route of the traffic would be, saying that, they're only going to be dropping off at the upper level So she did answer one of my questions on that, to say all parents would come in. It won't be like during the COVID years. They're going to come from the top of the hill. They will drop off in between, right in front of the main office building. or the
Which
main
is
office.
interesting, because the passenger side is the opposite side from the school. So you have to get in between the cars again when you
No, you
drop
turn
off.
left into the upper
Parking lot.
parking lot.
Do you
so
go
that-
behind the school to exit?
No.
Then,
No.
then, so,
What are you you're talking about, the driver is right next to the front door.
Right.
So
yeah,
the kids
not the
get out.
passenger.
The
Yeah,
back-
but the kids are
usually in
in
the
the
back
back
seat.
seat, because they're little, and they get out behind the
They
driver.
can get out the left door.
Yes,
Okay. The
which has
driver's
been
side.
encouraged. They don't want kids getting out on the
No,
right side.
that's what.
Well, and part of what we struggle with is people will stop and let kids out in the middle of Maple Ave.
Yes.
Wherever.
So
Yeah.
they'll, I mean, there's lots
Right.
of unsafe practices.
Absolutely.
And, you know, again, I appreciate people's patience. Parking and access of our buildings is a problem. It's hard to get in and out of Mountain View. It's hard to get in and out of Bartlett. It's hard to get in and out of Glen Lake. I mean, New Boston, it's pretty bad all around.
We didn't
Yeah.
talk about Mountain View earlier, did we, Scott?
We're going
bus
to talk about
turnaround?
Mountain View in terms of the project.
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
The bus turnaround?
Yeah.
He can give an update on that.
Yeah, that's later. Ellen, go
It is
ahead.
later, okay.
Our buses, they're going to be fully loaded, none of this COVID stuff happening anymore. Everybody who can go on a bus gets on a bus
Yep.
and goes to and from school. So we should not have hundreds of cars outside our schools. Well, they used to say, well, the school's asking us to drive our kids to
Right.
school. We're
Even
no
before-
We're
longer
not doing
doing
that
that.
anymore.
Even
But Ellen,
before
I
COVID,
I
there were a
think
lot
that
of
we
drop-offs.
have to be,
There were a lot.
Yeah.
we have to recognize that because we're going down in terms of the number of bus routes, and there are some that now might have been picked up 100 yards from their residence,
Right.
now have to walk a half a
To work.
mile to the bus stop, that some parents might seek alternative means for their child to get to school. So, and we're hoping that kids will go on the bus, but that's out of our control, to be candid, so.
We're not asking them to do that.
No, not like during COVID.
Right.
Correct.
And since Mr. Gross mentioned bus stop changes, we had about 22 bus stop changes in Goffstown and New Boston. We worked really hard this summer to work with the bus company to look at all the stops. Our police and fire departments were part of the process. Police went out and looked at every bus stop. DPW was great, that if there were areas that we felt like we needed to put a little hard pack and have an area off the road where kids could stand, you know, so we worked really hard this summer to make sure that we did the best we could, given the sort of dire circumstances. So we didn't do this because we wanted to. We didn't go into this saying, geez, it might be fun to, you know, really uproot all the bus routes and redo them all. This would be a good time to do that. This was really, we anticipated that we would be short buses, and the board recalls last year that I was sending out sometimes in the morning and the afternoon, every single day, cancellations, notifications of late buses, and we're trying to get away from that. So, not that I didn't mind doing it, but it's really not sustainable, you know, so to have, you know, one person who's expected to communicate bus changes every single day, morning and night, is kind of it was a problem, but.
So Jared had his hand up. Go ahead, Jared.
Just one statement. I might be wrong on this, but Maple Ave's not going to be one way. The ordinance, as I understood it, was you cannot turn onto Maple Ave from Elm Street. So if somebody wanted to leave Maple and go right, I believe they
Yes.
can.
So if you want to leave Maple and go right, you can go either
So it's
direction.
not one way.
Right, because that
So-
would be,
That's
yes.
a good point.
So
Yeah.
then I want to make, I
And-
want to make sure that.
And only
only
buses can turn onto
Only buses
Maple.
can turn
Right.
onto Maple. So if I wasn't clear on that. So if you're on Elm Street and you're looking to turn into Maple Ave, unless you're a school bus, you're out of luck.
Right.
So you've got to go up and around. So you have to go down to the library, go up, come over Smith Road and drop down, or do
Page Hill.
Page Hill.
Page Hill,
Yeah.
up and around way
Ridge
that
Hill.
way. So people will find, you know, they'll have to find a system that works for their families, but I anticipate the first week of school is always a traffic nightmare in Goffstown. It's like people forget,
Right.
but here we are, and it'll be the same thing tomorrow morning. So, be patient,
You have something
leave
else?
early, plan accordingly.
Right. Go ahead, Jared.
The other part of my question, Dan, that I asked is, was this something that we were consulted on, or we were just informed once they told everybody that they were doing this on Tuesday? The reason why this is important to me is I didn't know if we had an integrated message we could also have sent out on Tuesday to say, okay, working with the Goffstown Police Department, they're going through the whole list, but also, if you are dropping off, this is what it's going to look like. That was really the point that I was trying to make on the main communication, was why wasn't integrated? Why did we have to wait a couple days to send out what we're doing for our parents? That churn really caused problems for some parents.
So I sent out the notification and the video the next morning. So they approved the ordinance last Monday evening,
Yeah.
so a week ago today, and I sent the notification the next day.
To whom?
I sent it to Maple Ave families. So all Maple Ave families should have gotten an email from me that included the, right, Scott? That's, I mean, we didn't, yeah.
I mean, I think the issue was that the ordinance was accepted last Monday. We met with the police department a week or so before that, maybe a week and a half. They had already done the videos. Suzanne was planning on the drop-offs, but we couldn't do it. We couldn't do anything until the ordinance actually passed.
Well, that's, if I may continue.
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead,
That's,
Jerry.
that's the point I want to get at, is why didn't we not have an integrated message with the Goffstown Police Department on Tuesday to say, this is what it's going to look like, this is how you're going to be dropping off? That communication came out Thursday.
Yeah, I would say that the PD did everything in terms of, except for the drop-off and pickup in front of the school piece. You'd be correct there. But they took the lead in terms of all of the, Chris Patton, Officer Patton did all of the videos with GTV. We got copies of that beforehand, but I mean, I can't speak to, all of the things that were going on. I mean, there was so much construction at Maple Ave. Just getting these teachers in the classroom was a headache for Suzanne. So everything kind of came upon us pretty quick in that respect. So
But I see what Jared's saying, to have it at the same time, so parents
It's-
knew how to drive to Maple Avenue, but then what? How do you, because the last 2 years, everything was different, right? So I see what you're saying. So maybe in the future, moving forward, we
I
can
think
communicate
the
better.
timing of all of this is problematic. So, if the select board would have done this in June, and people could have known, planned, yes, I agree that would have been preferred.
I think that's what it came down to, is it just looks like we are disconnected from the select board and some of the decisions being made. And I think it was an opportunity that was lost, unfortunately, and hopefully we can do better next time.
Yeah, and I-
it sounds like it was just dropped on us, which happens. I mean, I know the administration probably had a lot of better things to do than try to figure this out 7 days before the first day of school, when we had all summer that we could have done it as well. So again, I want to commend our administration for the work that we've done, both at the SAU and our schools. And it's unfortunate that we just have a disconnect with the town on some of these items, where decisions are made right before school happening, and we are scrambling to get out communications in place.
Didn't we have like a whole committee working on this last year, and it didn't happen?
I don't think it was last
No, it
year.
was
I
before
think it was a
COVID.
couple
Was
years
it?
ago.
It was, yeah, this has been
We
an
have looked.
ongoing
We have looked at
issue.
this a number of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
So we have looked at this issue
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah.
We tried a similar traffic pattern a few years ago. We tried it for
Yeah.
about a week. We did surveys. Parents hated it, so we stopped doing it.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
So we'll hope for the best.
I think it almost has more oomph coming from the police department, like, you will do it this way.
Right. Yeah, the town.
My only fear
Yeah.
is that it has to be sustainable, because I would
If it works.
anticipate tomorrow that there will be a heavy police presence at Maple Ave, but when the police presence isn't there,
That's one, yeah.
what happens then?
Right.
Because that's when people are, live parking on Elm Street, that's when they're stopping and letting kids off in the middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And And remember, we don't have endless duties. So we don't have, an abundance of teachers that we can say, oh, we just, come outside and do more bus duties. That's not what we're looking to do. So we'll help support it, and I think we probably could have communicated all of this better, or certainly, with a little more time to spare, but at this point, we're gonna do the best we can, and hopefully it'll be, a more safe environment for kids. That's what we want. And my last piece before Scott gives a couple of project updates, you're gonna see when we get to hiring, we hired a lot of people. And of this entire list, almost all of them are experienced teachers. So when we met with the crew the other day, I think there were only like 3 to 5 who are new to teaching. They're all experienced teachers. So we were able to, and a lot of them, very experienced, top steppers. We had a very good hiring season. So whereas you heard from other communities that they have all these vacancies, we don't.
It's good.
We don't. And I would even share optimistically, Mr. Gross is hesitant to be too optimistic on this, but he's there a little bit. We've got a whole bunch of bus drivers in the queue that are going through training, they're going through their courses, they're doing, background checks, drug and alcohol screenings, all of that's in process, but I think it's looking favorable for us. So hopefully we're going in the right direction. So Scott, quick update on the other projects that we haven't mentioned?
Sure. First off, I got to give a lot of credit to Randy Loring, our facilities director, and Dawn Tabor, as well as Laura Taylor in the business office, who did a lot of the project work. So as some of you have mentioned, the windows projects at Maple, Bartlett, Mountain View, and here at the high school, that was a $1 million project. That aside from the asbestos issue, there was some asbestos-containing materials in the window caulking, which added about $150,000 of additional cost. The contractor, DL King, and the architect Stone River, they were just outstanding to work with. Weekly meetings, quickly got things resolved. We had 2 foremen on the job, Matt and Bob, who were fantastic also to work with. The level of communication between DL King and our custodial staff was just incredible. They were able to get in and out of different classrooms. So we did that entire project in about 8 weeks. We still have some shades it's a supply chain issue. They're on order, and hopefully they're going to come in this week or next. So it's regular manual shades. It's also some mechanical shades in our gyms that are going in. So that project went very well. Over the summer, we did install the irrigation system at Mountain View Middle School. So that was John Neville, and you saw that in your manifest, and Brian Fournier Landscaping, and that project was done as well. We also did a lot of the seal coating and line striping at most of our schools, but not all of them. Mountain View, there was some asphalt that was also replaced in the front of the school. There was quite a big lip there as well. A new scoreboard was installed. I showed photographs to folks on the A&F committee of the before and after, but the scoreboard at our primary game field looks outstanding. So if you want, I'll show you pictures later. The LED sign we're hoping to have installed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Folks are getting trained on how to use it over the next week. The biggest hiccup for us was the Mountain View bus turnaround. So we originally budgeted $160,000 for that project, which included engineering, and the bids came in excess of that. So our 2 lowest bids were $200,000 and $220,000 respectively. So with that, we wanted to chat with the board about, what our next steps, might be. One of the issues that we have is that because we're using federal grant dollars, you have to pay what's called Davis-Bacon wages. So these are wages that are oftentimes greater than what vendors might typically pay. And typically, vendors have told me in the past that it drives the cost up about 20% on projects. That being said, we have a couple of different routes that we could go. And again, I'm not looking for any action by the board tonight. But I think it's something that we're gonna have to talk about on the next meeting on September 19th. So one option is that we would just simply, proceed, select a vendor, and use ESSER funds, but we would have to take monies away from either other projects or use about another $80,000 of ESSER funds to get it done. Another option is to perhaps, we could utilize, we're gonna be getting a refund check from the state for the New Hampshire Retirement Association overage, so it's a 7.5% of the savings on our retirement is gonna be coming to us, I think, in October.
As
with
kind of a one-timer.
A one-timer. I'd liken it very much to the health trust type situation. So it's a situation in which the board could decide that they want to use that refund for this project and then use something else for ESSER. You know from your CIP list that you have in front of you that Mr. Bourget has probably $150,000 to $200,000 of projects. So there would be, we would be able to fund IT projects using those ESSER funds. And then the third is a hybrid option, which I have to explore, and that would simply be that we spend the $160,000 from ESSER, and then the balance, that $80,000, would either come from use of that retirement money or general fund money. Can't use a CRF because it's not an existing asset, it's something new. So those are the things that I'm gonna put before you in September, but I wanted you to have some time to think about it, and also gives me a little bit of opportunity to figure out, can we do like a hybrid? Because if we can do a hybrid, that's another option for us, where part of it is paid for by, the problem when you do the hybrid route, or I should say the problem, once you pay 1 penny using federal grants, the whole project is subject to Davis-Bacon, okay? You can't, so arguably, if we went outside of a federal project, we might see a lesser cost because of the Davis-Bacon wage issue. In either way, the odds of us doing this project in the fall are pretty slim to none. Just can't see it happening.
So more to come.
More to come on that one.
So are we done with superintendent report
That's
and
it,
everything?
thank you.
Okay, perfect, thank you, guys. All right, so old business. Retta, mission statement.
Yeah, and as you recall, we started going over this at the retreat, but we weren't able to go through it completely. So you have 2 statements. One is the Goffstown School District mission, vision, and guiding principles. This was already voted on and approved. We've just included it in case you wanted to reference it. It is the Goffstown School Board mission and guiding principles that we will be bringing back to you on September 19th after our P&C meeting. So this is just an FYI to take a look at it. If you have comments or suggestions that you want the committee to consider prior to our next board meeting, if you could get those to me probably by the Wednesday prior, whatever that date is. I just want to give Denise enough time to get the final draft out. Let me just.
September 14th, that's the Wednesday before. We meet September 19th.
Yeah. Would that give you enough time, Denise, or do you want it sooner? Okay, so if you can get comments to me before then, I can make any, additions or comments, so it will be on the printed version that we bring forward.
Okay, thank you, Retta. All right, so new business, 2022-2023 COVID emergency plan.
So I had hoped that we wouldn't be bringing COVID plans to you, but here we are. At this point, this document that you should have, and I did make, Mr. Cloutier had asked a question, I did make a corresponding change based on his input, so that's, Dan, you'll see that change in there. But this document summarizes the current CDC guidance that just came out what was it, Wendy, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago? I mean, this is kind of hot off the press. There are no real changes here, and you'll see that if you go on to the second page, I left some of this a little open-ended. At this point, we don't really know what reporting is going to be required of us, so I made kind of a general statement that whatever we're being asked to do, we will do, but at this point, I don't know what that is. Testing, we will not be moving forward with the Safer at School testing program with the PCR tests going into the fall. That program is stopping. They still have a little bit of funding, but at some point that program ends. Masking, as you'll see, the current requirements are if you are positive for COVID, when you return, you're required to wear a mask for days 6 through 10, which is the same as what it was when we ended the school year. So none of that has changed. The only kind of minor changes have been that there are no requirements for quarantine for positive household members, even if you're unvaccinated. So some of this has changed a little bit, so we scaled it back. You will see that I did retain a recommendation here to authorize the superintendent to adjust masking or other mitigation measures. And I would just remind the board and share with you that when you gave me that authorization in March, not once was it used. So at this point, I do feel confident. I wouldn't intend to provide any mitigation measures, but as you'll see, I included if there was clear evidence of school-based uncontrolled transmission, that at that point, that would probably get me to a point that we wanted to look at other mitigation measures. But apart from that, this looks a lot like what we did in March, but it's scaled back. There's a little less requirements. So consistent with the way that we've handled the entire pandemic, I would recommend that we adopt this as a temporary regulation to policy EBCF, which is Pandemic and Epidemic Emergencies. And when it changes, I'll change it and bring it back to you. So if we now have increased responsibilities or decreased, we would just plan to continue to adjust this and bring it back to the board each time that we would do so.
Ellen?
I was going to make a motion if you're
Okay.
ready.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I just have hopefully a quick question. In regard to the role of the school nurses, do we anticipate that they will have kind of a regular burden or compared to last year, or are they back to normal?
I think that this will continue to be a burden for the school nurses. So I wish I could say I don't think COVID will continue to impact us. The school nurses are still going to be living in this world. So that's going to include fielding questions from families, making sure that kids are, coming back when they're cleared to come back, making sure that they're wearing masks when they come back. So unfortunately, I do think this will continue to impact the nurses.
And as a follow-up, do we continue to have that? I know we had funded some.
We had funded an additional nurse last year. We did not retain that this year.
Okay.
However, the nurse that we hired for that is now my nurse in New Boston. And one of our former nurses in New Boston is now here at Goffstown High School. So we've had a little bit of a mix-up in our school nurses, but super excited to welcome Cherise Salter back to SAU 19. She was our nurse in New Boston for 1 year. She's fantastic. So we really lucked out, and we're able to hire 2 great nurses this year.
You all set? Okay, thanks, Rheta. Go ahead, Dan.
For what period of time are we asking for us to adopt this temporary regulation?
Good question, Dan. I would think until rescinded would be, I think, how we've approached it in the past. At this point, these are still the recommendations from CDC. I don't know if the board wants to put a timestamp on it, or, my hope would be that we're going to get rid of this regulation and not have it at all anymore.
So if we did a particular month or on a particular meeting, we can re-adopt it. That way I'm thinking positive. If we have an ending date, we can think positively. Is there a board member who has any ideas about a date?
I mean, if we want to take it on a semester by semester level,
Yeah.
or for the whole academic school year,
I was kind of thinking
I'm
about a
amenable to those
semester.
two.
Yeah.
When's the semester in January?
The
February?
third week of January, typically.
Is that,
So we could actually take it up at our
Trimester.
second
Yeah, that's,
meeting in
well, it's
January.
about half the year. That's,
Okay.
that's about 90 days.
so January meeting?
Yeah,
So maybe we could
That
put
makes
it
sense.
on the agenda for January, just as
Yeah.
kind of a state of the state and.
So
and-
that should be in the motion.
January 23rd is our fourth Monday. That's when we were thinking of doing it. I'd make a motion that we adopt the temporary regulation of policy EBCF until we take it up at our no later than when we take it up at our January 23rd, 23 meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
By Jared. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, okay, we're unanimous. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Your next topic, we listed on the agenda so that
Yeah.
the public could see what the topic was, but that would be a
The
non.
next two
The next two would be non-public
Right.
discussions. Moving on to D.
Well, just for a public discussion of the topic header, because we talked about a mentorship program
Yep.
moments ago. This is a mentor stipend proposal, so I don't need to talk about stipend, but can we talk about a program where a stipend would?
Sure. So and it's probably good for us to talk about this a little bit, so thank you for that, Dan. We have planned for and are implementing the first year of a new teacher mentor program. We have long had an informal mentor program where teachers would help support a new teacher, but there has never been any kind of formality to that, nor has there ever been a stipend. Now there will be both. So what we're proposing is a stipend amount, and we'll talk about that in non-public, but this is part of not only the mentorship program, but it's also part of a 2-year new teacher induction program. So instead of a kind of year one, we're going to support you and then good luck. This is a 2-year model because what teachers are ready to learn about and sort of tackle in their second year is different from their first year. So we really wanted to have kind of a developmentally staggered multi-year approach to supporting our teachers. So we're very excited about this. This is something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and we finally got there. So Mrs. Kohler's been doing a great job. She's worked on developing, she's got kind of a draft for the year. The other administrators have been part of that. I know that we're looking for teachers to be a part of that. We'd really like teachers to have a really significant role in this program. So not administrative-led. I'd love this to be administrative and teachers-led together, or better still, teacher-led. That would almost be kind of the pinnacle for me. But this is exciting, and this is something that I think is long overdue. So the stipend amount we'll talk about in non-public, but I think the board will be pretty supportive of this.
Just for curiosity, is that because it's under the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's compensation. Arguably, the board sets the rate without input from the association, but out of respect to everyone, I would rather have the conversation with the board first, so that you're aware of the amounts that we're talking about. But I think that, right, Scott? So this would be our discretion of what we feel the amounts should be. But I think it's most appropriate, let's talk about it before we kind of release that number.
Right, go ahead, Alan.
Does this program have an actually stated set of expectations for it and a process of evaluating the program and its effectiveness?
Yeah.
That's in process. We don't have a program evaluation tool yet, but that's all part of, Wendy?
It's part of the creation. So there's actually going to be, the way that we envision running this, there will be a half-year evaluation so that we can look at, are there pieces that we're missing, and then a end-of-year evaluation as well.
So fascinatingly enough, part of what we've learned during this process is there are some school districts that have a great mentor or induction program, but nobody has anything in writing. So we couldn't get a program overview, even though some districts have been doing this for decades. So the good news is we'll have a whole set of documents this will all be codified. And we would anticipate this is going to keep changing, so the way that we design it now is probably different than it's going to look next year and different still from, 2 or 3 years down the road. So we will do a good job with this. And the point of this is to help teachers so that they're more effective with students and we have better retention. That's the whole point. Help kids and help teachers really feel like they're being supported and want to stay here.
All right, so we're moving on to D, overnight field trip request. You guys should have the approval form.
Yes, and this one actually is not an overnight, it's just out of state. So
Right.
this one, this is the field hockey team. The board will recall that they had done this trip out of state for years and years and years. Jess Brown, our wonderful coach, wonderful math teacher, terrific human being. Jess is looking to take kids, 25 athletes, to Harvard University and Boston College for 2 different games. They're going to go see a game at Harvard and 1 game at Boston College, leaving at 11 a.m. on a Sunday, September 4th, and returning at 7:30 p.m. and no cost to students due to fundraising. So this is something I would absolutely support. And 2 chaperones.
Anybody have any questions?
Motion to open.
Oh, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, although it's no cost to the district, I thought we traditionally or codified someplace where the total cost of the trip was going to be evidenced, and then it was gonna say no cost to the school district because they were gonna do fundraising.
You
Yeah,
need
the-
to have the cost written out, but no
I
cost to us.
I can almost imagine that it's the bus.
It's the
Yeah,
bus.
it
The
is.
bus,
Yeah.
and I think Jess gets entrance to the games for free.
Yeah, that
So it's just.
makes
and
sense.
What she said here, she didn't put a cost in, she put 0.
Right.
But she said field hockey to cover the cost of the
bus.
bus. I think the board is aware, field hockey has kind of an ingenious fundraising scheme. Scheme's the wrong word, let me retract scheme. Fundraising model,
Right.
where they very effectively sell mums. And
Yes.
they sell beautiful mums that people plan for and want to buy, and they make a lot of money. That's how they're able to do this. So that provides, Scott, do you have a sense of what the cost of the field trip would probably be?
I have no idea.
I'd
But I
say
know that they
a
have
Sunday
ample
in
funds for it.
Boston for 8 hours, that's probably a $600 bill.
Yeah, that's not.
That's probably about what that is.
Now, is this a school-funded, now, is that money sitting in the school fund? Remember how we had to bring it all in, or is this
Yeah,
totally external?
it's part of their student activity account, which
Right.
is separate from our funds.
It's separate from our funds, but
Right.
it's housed within our book.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, so we're gonna find out sooner or later, because the money has to run through and the expense has to run through.
Yeah, run through the high school.
Right,
And, yeah.
the way it normally does, so
Yeah.
it'll show up on the book. I'm not against the travel, I just wanted to make sure that it was fully exposed, well, maybe the wrong word, fully documented.
Right. Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
All right, Jared, go ahead.
Motion to approve the trip as presented.
Thank you, Jared. Do I have a second by Ginny? Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you. Hopefully a good day.
I think they will.
All right, so we already did project updates. Is there more?
Anything else, Mr. Gross?
Scott? Okay.
No, I think we hit on all of them. It says retirement. We did pay the retirement, if you recall, in both
Yep.
fiscal years. So
That we
that's all
approved
taken
back
care
in
of.
June.
Yep.
Okay. All right, DFA investment policy. This is something we have to do every year to reaffirm.
Yeah, I thought we did it last year, but we didn't, thus an audit finding. But,
Ding.
Oops.
ding, ding. So every year, all of the school boards, Goffstown, New Boston, and SAU. SAU, we did it, well, at least it was in the minutes. Dan and I thought we did, but
Yeah,
it
I
wasn't
thought
in
we
the
did
minutes.
too.
We did it.
So
we
it's
did, but we
basically,
couldn't
you have
find
to
it.
just reaffirm.
Can we amend the minutes that we did?
No, we're past that. So we need a motion
it's
just
too
to
late.
reaffirm this
Yeah.
policy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what it says is the investment policy shall be reviewed annually by the school board. So if we all read it and it's in the minutes, we've reviewed it.
You
We
just
don't have
take
to,
You would motion that you reviewed it, and you're
Yeah,
you're reaffirming it. This way, it's in the minutes, and
Yep, and it'll be on the back when we reaffirmed it.
I'll move it.
All right,
Move
so,
that we affirm the investment policy.
thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Ginny. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we are unanimous. All right, Primex.
Yeah, so
Scott.
this one, for some of you who've been on the board for a little while, you've seen this before. Primex, as you saw when Dan mentioned, they are a property liability insurance carrier. They also deal with our workers' comp and unemployment. And they offer a premium cap program for us. It was a 7% cap in each of the 3 years. And in doing so, you are agreeing to use Primex as your insurance carrier for the next 3 years. Having worked in that industry for almost 30 years, I have nothing but good things to say about Primex. Their customer service is outstanding. The training that they provide school districts and municipalities, because that's not just us, the vast majority of school districts and towns also. So the town of Goffstown also uses Primex. Their rates are very competitive. They have good technology. They're a little bit hard on us with cybersecurity and stuff, but that's to be expected given the environment right now. So I would wholeheartedly recommend that we would proceed. I would also let you know that over the last 2 to 3 years, Primex has given us premium holidays. So where the exposure and the claims experience has not, in the years that it has not been what they anticipated, they gave us premium holidays, especially in workers' comp and unemployment. So, and their rates are very competitive. So that's all I have.
Anybody have any questions for Scott? So we'll need a motion to approve.
To authorize the chair to sign the contribution assurance program assurances, basically.
For the next 3 years?
Yep.
All right, so Ellen made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Shane. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. All right, so the next is our deliberative date. We have all the school board meetings here, so it says we're thinking of deliberative and a board meeting on February 6th, on a Monday night. Is that what we decided on? Because I know we were kind of talking about it.
The board meeting on the same night as deliberative is
Right.
hard.
Yes,
So that might be something that we might want to.
want to rethink.
We might want to rethink whether we need to have a board meeting or just deliberative is enough in and of itself. I think it's a lot of.
That was a rough night.
Yeah,
That was a long night, unless we do a board meeting another night, because we're only doing one in February then. I just don't want to have one night be too heavy.
Yeah, why don't we, if we can maybe just take a look as we get a little closer,
Yeah.
and if we feel like we have, we might either need to do a meeting that evening or add another meeting.
Yeah.
So why don't we
I
take a
agree, to
look?
have it the same night was,
I think it's hard to have
It's
it the
too
same
much.
night, and it's hard for GTV because they've got two very different setups. Remember last year we did it at
with
Mountain
are we going to
View.
do it back here again?
Yeah, I don't know. So I
Okay.
mean, we kind of haven't gotten that far yet.
We haven't gotten that far yet,
But
okay.
I think it's hard to do a board meeting the same night.
Right,
I think it's hard for the board.
okay, and then also, just everybody looking at October, some of those budget presentations, we're also going to have board meetings first, right?
I think
We have to have
October 3rd and 5th
17th.
is a
3rd and
no.
17th would
Right.
be the board meeting and then budget stuff. Right? And then the 5th would just be presentations, the rest of the presentations.
Right.
So board meeting is at what time?
So it'd be 3 and 17.
Yeah, so it looks like we'll start at 6 for the board meeting, and then as soon as we're done, get into the first half of the presentations. The 5th would just be presentations, starting at 6.
Starting at,
6.
okay, so it's.
So the times are the same, it's just the 3rd and the 17th will have a board meeting first before budget presentations and review. Are we doing, we don't know if we're doing.
That's still up for debate.
tomorrow.
Okay, all right, so let us know.
There's a meeting, there's a
If
budget
budget
committee
committee's
meeting
coming
tomorrow.
here.
I know. Have we invited them? Have we
That's,
shared?
I did share that with the chair. The chair is gonna discuss it with the board tomorrow night.
Okay, so you'll let us know, Ellen?
Yep.
At the
That's why I
next
was
meeting.
inquiring.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, is that it for,
And deliberative is going to be the 6th, or?
yeah, it looks like February 6th, Monday night will be deliberative. It's just when we're going to do a board meeting, if
Okay.
not. Because I know this, last year we cut 2 out, but then the next meetings were big.
Yeah.
So we'll have to rethink
Yeah,
that.
let's take a look at what the agenda topic items are looking like as we get into December, and we'll make a decision from there.
Okay.
GHS 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
For,
Deliberative session,
we don't have a time yet.
but at the high school.
They don't know yet. More than likely, I would think it's going to be at the high
Yeah.
school.
Really, that would, we would want to collaborate with GTV and the
And see.
town to
That's what
find
we were
out what.
talking about.
So if we're
Okay.
doing our meeting on Monday, the town's deliberative is probably on Tuesday. We have a snow date on Wednesday, they have a snow date on Thursday, is probably how it goes, because we only have a 1-week window that we have to get the meeting in
Right.
statutorily. So, and we don't want to wait until the second weekend, that's too close.
Right.
You have a snow day, and, you know, bad things happen.
Right, so it'll be more information, but looks like February 6th.
And remember, we also have to work in New Boston's deliberative,
Yeah.
so we have to give them a date and a snow date as well, so.
Okay. All right, so the next is school staffing.
Okay, so everyone should have a copy of the staffing
Yes.
sheet. Most of the first page are just notifications of a leave of absence and then a number of track changes, so congratulations to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 teachers. So congratulations to those 19 teachers for a track change.
That's great.
As well as a couple of long-term substitutes for your approval. And I think I would say, please don't make me read this whole list. Not only do you not want to, you're going to hear me massacre names, but I would,
We could do section at a time.
I would request the teacher resignations. So some of these you'll see, some of these came in kind of late, but we made our way through and we managed to replace everybody. So even though we had some kind of last-minute resignations, we were able to replace them all.
Okay, so you
I
need a
have one
motion?
quick question on the resignations, because I see Dr. Murchison now. Is she just not an English teacher because she's here in the library?
No.
Or
So
she-
she has left us.
Altogether?
Yeah, I'm very happy for her. This is kind of like her dream job, but she got a professorship at SNU.
Oh,
So
she
she's-
was supposed to
She-
work in here.
She was supposed to work in here.
Okay.
So she was scheduled to be half-time in the library,
Right.
along with Mrs. Boschman, who was gonna be the other half, and the two of them together were gonna be our full-time library media specialist.
Mm-hmm.
So she has left us. Again,
Wow.
happy for her.
So did you replace her to teach that college
We-
prep course for seniors?
We did.
Okay.
We did. So we had a
Good.
couple of AP classes
Yeah.
for college composition that I believe she was scheduled to teach, and we
Yeah.
were able to replace all
Oh,
of the
good.
AP courses.
Wow, okay.
Because you have to be trained,
Yeah.
you know, to do that. So that was one of my fears, is that
Wow.
we wouldn't be able to run those sections, but they were able to move people around and they figured it
Good.
out.
How about the library?
So the
Oh, right,
library,
yeah.
Mrs. Boschman is going to be in here, and I think we've got kind of a part-time situation with another teacher or two, but it is kind of an unconventional path. But she's going to be terrific. She's a long, experienced English teacher. She knows the kind of research support that her teachers need. And again, this was So library media is not a critical shortage area anymore, interestingly enough. And there's a provision in the state law that we're able to declare a local emergency for certification shortage. Library media is not one of the ones I'm able to do that with. So we either had to do something creative or we had to have a fully certified library media specialist, which we did not find. So we kind of came up with a plan C, and I think it'll work out fine. We'll evaluate it and see, is this something we want to continue? But, you know, the nice thing is that we have a very known, experienced teacher who's going to take the primary lead in the library.
Go ahead, Ellen.
So, well, I
Oh,
have one
sorry,
question
Dan.
first.
Yeah.
So, when you said we hired a lot of people over the summer, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not saying that's not a lot, but between the last time we saw and did hiring, we've only hired 10 more.
Yeah.
That's
So we
actually not,
And really, if you look at the resignations,
yeah.
the nominations correspond to the resignations. So these are ones that came in after the end of June. And we were able to, with the exception of physical therapists, the physical therapists, we chose to go a contracted service route. We just didn't feel that we had enough, we didn't have enough hours to warrant hiring our own person. But all the rest of those were all hired.
Cool.
So,
So, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, just for
Jared.
the resignations, I take it these were employees that signed a contract to be with us this year?
correct.
And based on the new agreement that we have with the union, we will be looking to be reimbursed for replacing these individuals.
So there were some of them that we were evaluating that for, but that is the language in the contract, depending on what their circumstances were. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. All right, so if there's no other questions for the resignations, I'll take a motion to accept the resignations. Ellen?
I move to accept teacher resignations as presented.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Shane? Any further discussion?
Just the
Yeah, go ahead.
question that Jared brought up, if we accept the resignation, does that go away?
No.
No, because it's in the contract,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
I didn't know if we wanted to phrase it whatever way it needs to be phrased, to be clear.
Right, I see what you're
Unless
saying.
Mrs. Moran
What do you
is
think?
typing.
Right,
I think we're okay to accept the resignations.
okay. All right, thank you, Dan. All right, so I have a motion, I have a second. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. So now we have teacher nominations group.
Yep.
Any questions on any of those? Ellen?
You have more nominations than resignations, so are there additional?
Yeah, there might have been a couple of other ones that were still, you know, we were still trying to fill,
Oh,
but.
okay.
I mean, the good news is, with the exception of that French for 7th grade, we hired everybody,
Excellent.
so.
Are
No
you
one at the
still
high school.
looking to hire French 7th grade?
I think we've given up on that at this point.
For seventh grade, well, we're hoping that we're gonna have someone that's gonna be able to take that position for just seventh grade. Eighth grade, we're not, but no, it won't be a full half-time position as it was before.
Okay. All right.
I'll move
All right, go ahead, Ellen.
that we approve teacher nominations for 22-23 as presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
By Shane. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, okay, we're unanimous. And then we have another resignation.
So you have one resignation, this was our HVAC mechanic. We have not replaced this position, so
Are
I
we-
think we're
are
at,
we
we're,
not?
we're trying.
Oh, okay.
We're trying. This is a difficult hire. Scott, we haven't found anybody for that,
Nope.
right? So this one is open right now, but we, you know, wish our person well.
All right, so I'll need a motion.
Move to accept the resignation of the HVAC position.
Okay, by Ellen, do I have a second? By Ginny. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, okay, we're unanimous. Now we have co-curricular sport nominations.
Yeah, and I think you could do these both in one
Yeah,
batch. So
and
you could do,
non-sport.
you know, sports nominations and non-sports nominations as well. So these are, you'll see there are very few kind of, there are a few new coaches, some of them are volunteers, but For the most part, this is a pretty stable group, and if you look at the,
There's a lot of people.
same thing on the
Yeah, the
non-sports,
back.
these are all kind of our
And the
people.
question
and-
mark?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, why is there a question mark next
On
to
Lisa?
Lisa Winrose?
Is she new?
I
No, she's
think,
been doing it for a while.
I don't know why there's a question mark, but there's, one of the positions that we had wanted to fund was the DI coordinator. Is that why there's,
I would assume so.
I don't know why there's a question mark there. That's a good question, and I hadn't seen it
Okay.
until you pointed it out. But Lissa has been doing this for years and years and
Yeah.
years,
Mhm, she has.
volunteering, by the
Yeah.
way. So no
Right.
compensation, has, I would say, very effectively coordinated our program.
Does anybody have any questions on any of these?
Well, technically, we can just say co-curricular nominations.
Yep.
Yep.
Sports
Jenny,
and
did you have a
non-sport.
No,
question?
we don't have to say that.
Yeah, right, just all of them together.
Yeah.
Move to approve.
It looks as though all the
nominations.
positions are filled.
Are they all filled? I
Yeah.
believe they are all filled. We were struggling to find soccer coaches at Mountain View, but somehow Wendy and Mr. Garrity came up with people at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Wendy, were there any other Mountain View vacancies for athletics or co-curriculars that you're aware of?
There's some that are not listed on here yet that we normally fill, so I'm wondering if they just have not been brought forth yet. For example, yearbook from Mountain View is not on here, our strings and select chorus is not on here, so I would imagine that will probably be coming to the next board meeting, because the list isn't complete.
Gotcha.
I was glad to see some B teams.
Yeah,
Coaches school.
and we weren't sure
I know,
if
yeah.
we're gonna be able to fill those,
Right.
but
That's cool.
we were.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I moved it.
Yeah, oh, you did?
Yep.
Okay, so Ellen made a motion. Do I
Need a
have?
motion to accept the co-curricular nominations.
That's what I said.
Right,
Yes.
yes, thank you. And are you seconding, Dan?
No,
No? Who's seconding,
I
Ginny?
said you didn't talk loud.
I would just repeat.
Ginny, are you seconding?
Oh, actually, I will not. No, go ahead.
Okay, who's seconding? Retta. All right, Retta is seconding. Is any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining. All right, we're unanimous. Thank you. You guys have been very busy.
Thank you.
All right, what's Maple Avenue lunch monitors?
So Maple Ave lunch monitors, did she do a handout on this one?
No,
I didn't see it.
I don't see anything.
Let me see if I have a dollar amount on this. I can tell you what, here it is. So, when we talked about the changes in traffic flow, one of the things that we were trying to accomplish is, we believe that we have more duty needs associated with drop-off and pickup. So Mrs. Pishka has made a request to hire 4 lunch monitors, which would then remove the duty responsibilities for corresponding teachers, because we have more duties in the morning and the afternoon with drop-off and pickup. So this is, we did this at Bartlett. This was similar. We did this during COVID. Bartlett had lunch monitors. I don't know if we'll be able to hire these, but the idea is that we would be freeing up an estimated 15 duties per day, 160 duties per week. So by adding these 4 positions, which are about $6,496 per position, so 4 of them for a cost just under $26,000. That's what the request is. We do support this. This was unbudgeted, but I think that this is something that would help Maple Ave, particularly given the constraint of having increased duties associated with before and after school pickup. So this is unbudgeted, but at this point, Mr. Gross, from a funding perspective, how would you pay for $26,000 of new lunch monitors at Maple?
Assistant superintendent salary.
That's a different line, that's SAU.
Right.
Right now, we have numerous paras that are unfunded, so I would probably look there first. And then as we're talking about this retirement situation, so I think I would look for it. But this one, in talking with Suzanne, there are 530 kids, and there's just way too much going on in that school right now to not go forward with something like this, so I'll get it done.
Go ahead, Ellen.
It's just more of a generic question, really. Why are teachers doing duties as opposed to paras? Wouldn't that be less expensive?
We don't have enough.
I don't think they're on,
Yeah,
they're
Do paras do these duties?
They do.
Paras do duties.
Say that 3 times. Wow.
Add that to the blooper reel. But we don't have an overabundance of paras. The paras are with kids. They're
that's
all
right.
assigned to
That's right.
high-need students, there aren't.
And they're still watching those kids until
They're
those
with
kids
those
get on the
kids. They're
bus.
with students all day.
Oh,
I'm trying to get the
That's too bad.
combination bus driver, lunch monitor,
Right.
fill the day.
There you go.
there you go.
So you need a motion?
Yes,
if we
please.
approve this. So does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion? Go ahead, Dan.
Other business, I just had the question. Now, because I wanted to go with what
Is
Ms.
this about the
Bernard.
monitors?
Huh?
Is this about the monitors?
No.
Oh, we have to
Okay.
first
I'll
finish
move
that.
that we approve the lunch monitor
Oh, we
request.
haven't done that yet.
Yeah, hang on
Sorry.
1 second, Dan. Go ahead, Ellen.
I move that we approve the lunch monitor request.
Okay. Ellen made a motion, and that's for the 4 monitors, correct?
Yes,
Did
as
you say
requested.
4? Okay, thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Ginny. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, it passed unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dan.
So I believe, is there not a state law that was just passed, and is it still in force where we do not teach, we do not promote, for lack of a better word, the CRT program?
We 100% do not teach, do not support, do not have anything happening associated with critical race theory. Zero.
Thank you.
0%.
And it
Thank
would
you.
have to come through this board
Absolutely.
before it goes.
So there is no teaching of critical race theory here. This is not something that I support, have supported. There is no secret plan to quietly indoctrinate our children with critical race theory. We have none of this happening here. And in fact, the state created, the Department of Ed supported and created a website where parents could report teachers for teaching divisive concepts. And there was actually a bounty put up by a private citizens group to provide a reward for anyone who caught a teacher teaching something they weren't supposed to. And to date, there are 0 people in this entire state of New Hampshire that have been found to be teaching something that they shouldn't have been. So with respect to the public comment, I give the board and I give the community my complete assurance that we are not teaching any of these concepts.
Thank you.
Have never taught any of these concepts. Have no intention of teaching any of these concepts.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
So before we move in, we do have non-public.
Are we on
Oh.
other business?
Yeah, I just want to make note in your folders, Denise made copies of schedules for A&F, P&C, C&E, and PRC. So you should have copies of all the dates. Did I get all those?
Do we also have a list of acronyms and what they mean?
I know, right? Everybody knows, administration,
Denise in here
finance,
too?
policy. But that way you have it. Denise made copies in your folder.
Yes, by the way, thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Denise.
so,
Okay.
and also a list of all the committees everybody's on. She was very good to get that all for us, so I just want
Takes good care of us all.
everybody to see that. All right, so yes, we're at other business that may legally come. Go ahead,
Okay,
Alan.
just 2 quick ones, question, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
If there's anything that I need to be aware of for the budget committee tomorrow night, please let me know, outside of whatever we've discussed here this evening.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'd like to be prepared.
Yeah.
And I think I asked this before, but I'm not sure. We're working on inviting the budget committee to come and join us at our meetings. Our meeting dates are set, so
Yeah.
can I extend that at the meeting? Or
Yeah, yes, and I'll be there tomorrow as well, because I have to do an
okay.
orientation for some of the new members, so
Okay.
Danielle and I are gonna do that.
Awesome, I'm set. I'm
You're
ready
good?
to go.
All right, thank you, Ellen, for helping
Just for
out.
giggles, can we talk about that for 30 seconds?
Yeah,
It had gone both ways, whether we were going to invite them or not invite them. We landed on inviting them for full participation. Do you remember, Jared?
The last couple years, we had a joint session to review
Right.
the presentations. They have pros and cons. Some of us, we sometimes like it, we sometimes don't like it. Same thing with them. They
It-
sometimes
it
like it, they
vacillates.
sometimes don't. I've looked at it from a personal standpoint. I look at it as best use of time for administrators. Instead of our administrators having to present the same material twice, usually to little questions from both groups, it's an opportunity to minimize time away from their families. Just do it once, and then we can have those conversations together. That would be my preference, but again, I'm only one individual and two boards.
No, I would wholeheartedly invite them to be fully participatory and actually have the ability to ask questions. I
Which
mean,
they've
I
always
sat at
been.
that table for 9 years.
yeah. Well, the last 2 years, they could ask questions
Yep.
when they came, yeah. So I think it was just decided to offer it to them and
Cool.
whether they
See,
want
if
to,
they wish to
if they
do
want to
it,
do it or not.
I would, if they wish
Yeah,
to do it,
it's up
let's
to
have
them.
them.
Yeah.
If they can just let us know what
Yeah.
they would like and.
Yeah, well,
We
I
can
guess
make
they'll
the
just
tables
talk about it
available.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Heather, I totally forgot to do one of the project updates. I just dawned on me. I mentioned it in A&F, but I didn't. And that was
Okay.
the field renovation
Oh, yes.
committee. So the field renovation, the artificial surface field, we got some good news over the summer. So the state approved what's called our sole source contract approval. There is a company out of Connecticut who has done a lot of work in New Hampshire. They're called Field Turf. And Field Turf did the St. A's turf field. They've done SNU, Phillips Exeter Academy, Exeter High School,
They just did
Hollis
Hollis
Brookline.
Brookline.
Just a boatload of New Hampshire high schools. And the state did give us approval to use them as the vendor. What was nice about it is that they are part of a buying consortium called Sourcewell. So they already submit all of their specs and bids and pricing to this national buying group. So they've already been vetted, and I provided, it was well over 100 pages of documentation to the state. And I would argue that Sourcewell, which is that buying group, their vetting and RFP process is way better than we could have ever done, and they do it on a national level, not just what we would do, say, in New Hampshire. So that was very encouraging. The second bit of good news is that Justin Huff met with our donor, and our donor is very committed to this, and the next steps are for me to work with the donor and our legal counsel. The donor wants to make the contribution. Again, this is a $500,000 contribution in 2 payments, one in December and one after the new year for tax purposes, for tax reasons. So we did do test pits on the field to determine soils, high water tables, ledge. So we know we have ledge in the far side of the field. They're going to be coming back to do what's called borings. Any lights that go in have to be 16 feet, Brian, down. I didn't tell you that. That's pretty far down. And then when they can't do that, they drill down and they core a hole in any type of ledge or anything, and they do it that way. So
And
it's
they pin it to the ledge.
They pin it to the ledge.
Wow.
Yes. So I met with the electrical subcontractor here as well. So power will come from the poles by the softball field. They're not allowed to crisscross the power lines that go across our parking lot. So when they hit the parking lot, they go around it. There would be a transformer. So it's the committee. Ellen's on the committee. They're going to meet tomorrow at 5:45, and so we're doing rather well, on that project. And I was so pleased that the donor is very excited about that.
So at the next meeting under subcommittees, we should have that
Yeah, we're going to start we'll
so
start
we
to
can
report out,
update. Okay.
on all of that. The other bit of good news is that I had gotten preliminary pricing, which I shared with you. The vendor came back saying, yep, the pricing is fairly consistent with what we gave you. So I was a little nervous, about that. I should let the board know that I did simultaneously look, and I got pricing from our own engineering company if we went out to bid, and their estimates were a lot higher, about 300,000 higher if we went a more conventional route in terms of civil engineering going out to bid. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and we're moving ahead, and Ellen will be able to brief us going down in the future.
Just an FYI, it's in this building at 7 o'clock. I have budget committee here.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why
Maybe
it's
together.
intentionally done that way.
Perfect.
Do you want me to bring you some food too, or we'll get a pizza?
Coffee.
Hey, I want you to notice, I'm doing it all on my,
Good
this
for
is a
you.
big step.
That is a huge step for you.
It's a big phone too.
All right, so is there
I have
any
to
other
see it.
business that may legally come? All right, so our next school board meeting is September 19th. We do have some non-public. What are we going in under first?
We can do them in order, so why don't we go
Do it
under
A?
A
Okay.
to start.
So I need a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A32A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the discipline of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him or her, unless the employee affected has a right to a meeting and requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted.
So moved.
By Dan, do I have a second?
Go ahead.
Ellen?
Yep.
All right, so I have to do roll call. Greta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Caroline?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Dan? And Heather, yes. So we are in non-public.
All right, we will.
So
head
we're
down.
gonna head down